An old Magnatone catalog proclaimed, "The reverb gives concert hall acoustics to the amplifier." In fact, the spring reverb is a blessing for the electric guitar player. It wraps the notes in a warm halo, which makes our solos and arpeggios sound full-bodied. Most electric guitarists consider the spring reverb an essential component of their tone and couldn't easily give up its characteristic drip sound. Many of us rely on the built-in spring reverb of their amplifier. Often that is an excellent solution, as in the case of old Ampeg or Gibson amplifiers, and of course of classic Fender models like the Twin Reverb and many others. Nevertheless, some other amplifiers may have a weak or poor sounding reverb. On the other hand, countless iconic amplifiers don't have any onboard reverb at all. That's the case of most models by Vox, Marshall, Harwood, Mesa Boogie, and many others. Same with Fender Tweed or Brownface vintage amplifiers with their essential control panels. Now, these amplifiers have a killer sound that can't be dismissed just because they don't have reverb. Getting to the point, BTR number 40, Real Spring Reverb with non-reverb amplifiers, the ultimate solution. First of all, why do I insist on talking about true or real spring reverb when there are so many digital emulations? Some digital pedals definitely deserve a honorable mention, like the Catalin bred Topanga and the Sub-Decay Spring Theory, notably both from Portland. That's what I use when I need to fly with a super compact pedal board fitting in my carry-on baggage. Nevertheless, an analog pedal with a real spring tank inside has a plus. It's not only that the analog real deal sounds better than its digital emulation. The warm and smooth decay and dynamics of a good old spring stank or pan is still unrivaled, but a convincing emulation of the spring reverb effect is not the only factor involved. As I already mentioned, I believe that the performance of an effect should be evaluated by two main parameters. The first is the efficacy or beauty of the effect itself with regards to your music. The other is the way its circuitry affects your overall tone, both when it's on and when bypassed. In the last episode, BTR number 39, we dove into an in-depth analysis of tube spring reverb and the great benefits that its fully analog path can bring to the signal. The analog preamplification stage enriches the tone, adding texture and color. A true spring reverb wins on this point. So, how can we get real spring reverb if we cannot count on the onboard reverb of our amplifier? That's when real spring reverb pedals come into play. In essence, they are based on the concept of recreating the tube or valve preamplification required by a spring stank with a more simple and practical solid-state circuit. This leads to the downsizing of the reverb unit so that it can be conveniently set up and transported everywhere we go to play. As a long-time aficionado of vintage Vox AC30s and Fender Tweed amplifiers, I'm not new to real spring reverb pedals. A few models are on the market for quite a while now, and I tried different solutions through the years. The Danelectro Spring King, introduced in 2002, is the first pedal I saw claimed as a true spring reverb. Actually, it is not fully analog. It's based on a hybrid combination of a small spring tank and a digital delay chip. It's affordable, but didn't convince me for build quality and tone. In 2004, I bought from the USA the Songworks Little Lanilei, possibly the first boutique pedal built around a real spring pan. It remained in my pedal board until the effect eventually faded out, becoming barely audible. Also, it caused feedback problems at loud stage volumes. In 2008, I switched to the Van Amp's Soulmate with an awesome look. It's not really indicated for strong input signals, and it introduced some distortion. In 2015, I switched to the Carl Martin Headroom, coming with even 2 preset settings. It's versatile, practical, and it sounds nice and warm enough, if you can close an eye on its antiseptic medical equipment look. More interesting products are the Demeter Reverbulator, quite pricey, especially in Europe, and the NAS Ekdal Moisturizer, which under many aspects is not conceived with a guitar player in mind. In the last few years, some more products arrived on the market. One company in particular tackled the subject of true spring reverb pedals, setting a new standard. Surfy Industries created the Surfy Bear Reverbs, aimed to provide the ultimate solution to Vox, Marshall and Tweed amps fans. Surfy Industries is based in Sweden, and it's fueled by the technical expertise of Bjorn Ischden and the passion of Lorenzo Valdambrini, who is no other than the well-known guitar player Surfer Joe. The company can also count on a sales department in Memphis, Tennessee, ensuring distribution and support in USA, Canada and Mexico. The mission of the Surfy Bear effects is to bear across the tides of time the tones of the vintage Fender Spring Reverb. In particular, they draw direct inspiration from the legendary Fender 6G15 unit of the early 1960s, which we saw and discussed in detail in our last episode. The tubes of the old Fender circuit give way to JFET transistors, carefully hand-selected and coupled in Sweden. The Surfy Bear line consists of 3 models: Classic, Metal and Compact. I have to note that each name is not marked on the units, which I find a bit unusual and confusing. Also, they could come up with a more accurate old-school instructions leaflet. The Classic is the top of the line, comes with an elegant padded nylon bag and mounts quality Switchcraft components. All 3 models have an opening at the bottom, with a piece of foam cushioning the springs for safer transportation. Simple and effective, as opposed to the tricky locking systems seen on other devices. The opening is also useful to keep the springs under inspections. The 3 Surfy Bear models run on a 12-volt power supply provided with the units. Their circuit develops more heat than you would expect from your typical pedal. For this reason, the Classic has small hole vents on one side. I first came across a Surfy Bear Classic unit when I went to see my friends of the surf band Bradypus 4, and it couldn't have been showcased any better. In fact, the Surfy Bear Classic is devotedly intended as a 21st century rendition of the vintage 6G15 unit. In a surf rock band environment, it is destined to a prominent position. The original project by Leo Fender is reformulated to keep up with the challenges of contemporary market and to meet the expectations of today's players. Still, as the name Classic suggests, this effect retains concept and controls of the vintage unit, with full-sized 17 inches tank made by Accutronics. It has a captivating look, with pilot switch and a proper jewel light. The chassis is pleasantly made of medium-density fiberboard and pinewood. It's offered with 3 different covering options: brown, black and rough blonde Tolex, of course winking at vintage Fender amps. Like the vintage Fender unit, the Surfy Bear Classic is not meant to fit in a pedal board, but rather to sit on top of your amplifier or on the desk of a recording studio. It doesn't have a foot switch. To bypass the reverb, you have to rely on an optional external switch. The Classic will treat your dry signal with some preamp coloring, which is exactly how the 6G15 works, as opposed to true bypass pedals. While listening to its sound, I owe you a little technical clarification. For the recording of the BTR channel, I generally use 2 microphones. One, closer to the amp cabinet, picks up a deeper and more defined sound. The other, set farther from the speaker, picks up more room sound or ambience reverb. In this case, I want to capture a signal as dry and close to the sound at source as possible. In this way, you can evaluate the reverb effect coming from the speaker without influence of the room sound. I asked the BrainGas microphones to come to help. The name BrainGas might sound hilarious, yet it reveals how serious these people are about sound. In fact, the name refers to the goosebumps we get after listening to an inspirational sound. I'm using the Ferro model, presented as an old school, which we like, JFET diaphragm condenser microphone equipped with an output transformer. Ferro was designed by a guitar player, and it's ideal for the studio recording of a high sound pressure level sources, such as, random example, a cranked up electric guitar. More on the BrainGas microphones in the next BTR episodes. For more detailed information, please check the link in the description. The construction of the Surfy Bear reverbs is clean, straightforward and streamlined. The tank is simply wired with RCA plugs, like in amplifiers. Since the Surfy Bear Classic takes direct inspiration from the traditional Fender circuit, it uses tanks with the same exact impedance and specifications as the tanks in blackface amplifiers and 6G15 unit. The Surfy Bear Metal, with no frills look, is also built around the same full-size Accutronics tank. The Metal is aimed to integrate with improved flexibility in a modern setup. It has true bypass switching and a volume control to match the level of the bypassed signal. It also has a remote foot switch plug to avoid accidental spring crash that may occur when stepping on the onboard switch. This is not an essential feature. Most players usually leave the reverb always on throughout their show, but certainly it's always good to have an extra option. The Surfy Bear Metal is more easily placed on top of your amp. Fitting it into a pedal board could be awkward and challenging, but it's still possible. In fact, if you want really luscious reverb, this unit is well worth the effort of rethinking completely your pedal board. If you are planning to rearrange your pedal board from the scratch, then you should really consider the Surfy Bear Metal. Like the Classic, the Metal provides articulated and warm reverb with smooth and lush decay. In fact, the full-size pans provide a more textured and full-bodied effect than shorter tanks. The Metal is perfectly suited as an outboard effect in a recording studio. This reminds me Jamaican dub producers like Lee Scratch Perry, King Tubby, Scientist or Mad Professor.
The first and most simplest effect was the reverb. You get a tin cup and a spring. But the thing about the spring reverb, it always had a metallic sound to it.
We used to run the snare through spring reverb units for their trademark accents and fills. The Surfy Bear line is completed with the Compact, with built-in half-size 8 inches Accutronics pan. This model offers a more economical and practical solution, easier to fit into a pedal board. It comes with soft touch switches, which allow to prevent accidental spring rattles and crashes. The shorter springs don't sound as sweet and articulated as full-size tanks. Still, 8 inches pans are commonly used in pedals, since they offer an excellent compromise between tone and convenience. The Surfy Bear Compact has true bypass switching and volume control, as seen on the Metal. Furthermore, it has 2 selectable mixer controls, a feature inspired by its direct competitor Carl Martin Headroom. Actually, the mixer interacts with the dwell and tone knobs, so for a really effective switching between 2 preset reverbs, you would need 2 full banks of controls. Anyway, again, it's always cool to have extra options. You can still use the mixer switch to get more prominent reverb in the middle of a song, for instance, for an arpeggio or solo part. In a traditional spring reverb, the decay is determined by the physical characteristics of the tank. So it's surprising to see a decay control on a fully analog reverb. In fact, it's an exclusive original feature. It actually acts like a gate control intended to cut the length of the decay at a desired threshold. This circuit also prevents spring crash when a signal is run through the unit. When using the Compact in a pedal board, you will probably need to use its dedicated power supply, unless you have a compatible 12-volt output in your pedal board. Bottom line, the Surfy Bear pedals were clearly conceived by expert, tone-discerning guitarists. From their design philosophy, we can learn some important insights. A good reverb unit sounds warm, with well-defined and moderate decay tail. This is especially true when playing in a band, as the overall sound could be adversely affected by excessive decay time or ear-piercing frequencies. While most players are keen to sacrifice their tone for more compact, lightweight, and versatile gear, Surfy Bear reverbs are intended for uncompromised, serious tone. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to keep in touch. Feel free to join the Facebook group Bob Stone Review and visit our Instagram profile. Please remember that your feedback and comments are the only fuel to keep the BTR channel going.